Now, FPL might have only just begun, but in today's video, we're going to take a look at the best players you need to be targeting ahead of Game Week 2. Now, before we dive into today's video, of course, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the FPL Tom YouTube channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we're trying to hit 17,500 subscribers before the first international break. And honestly, it'd be absolutely immense if we could do that. As always, with my kind of who to buy or transfer targets videos, I like to take a look at the 11FI data. It's something I did last season, and I just think it's a really useful tool before, of course, looking at some individual players. So up first is the clean sheet numbers over the next 5 game weeks. As we can see here, Arsenal really fancied. So, you know, definitely if you've got some Arsenal defenders, worth holding on to those, with a great fixture coming up in Game Week 2. They're standout, but also a good fixture in Game Week 4 as well. Liverpool do head into kind of, you know, 2 tricky weeks over the next few. So if you have got a Van Dijk, you were disappointed in Game Week 1. It is worth noting that the clean sheet numbers aren't quite there for Game Week 2 or Game Week 3, but 4, 5 and 6 all represent good value for clean sheets for Liverpool as well. Obviously, a lot of the other teams towards the top of this list haven't really featured so far this season, so not ideal. Obviously, Konza coming off in the game today with a red card. Again, not really ideal. As you can see, there's some decent fixtures coming up, so you potentially could still hold on to him. Aston Villa have still got some great fixtures, and you do feel once his suspension is, of course, out of the way, definitely then, you know, there's plenty of good options to move to. I think an option you could maybe go for, if of course you did have Konza in your side, is maybe look at Crystal Palace, see how they get on. But they've got a decent opportunity of a clean sheet with a 34% chance. Game Week 4 as well with a 44% chance as well. So maybe that is where somebody like a Richards, or if Gahey is looking like he's going to stay at Liverpool, could also be pretty decent value as well. Let's move on then to the projected goal numbers coming up over the next 5 game weeks. We are seeing Manchester City top of that list, so if you did go for the Erling Haaland route, I would expect to keep, you know, ticking on with him, especially in Game Week 2. I don't know whether or not, you know, maybe some of the influence from last season and Spurs' poor defensive numbers might potentially have kind of infiltrated that, but I definitely think, you know, they've looked a lot more rigid in the opening 2 games we have seen from them. Obviously in the Super Cup, they did extremely well for large parts of that game to limit one of the best teams in the world right now. And today against Burnley, they pretty much nullified them, to be honest. They didn't really give Burnley any opportunities. They look like a very solid unit across the board. Liverpool's numbers do, of course, drop off with some more difficult fixtures. So again, bear that in mind if you are thinking about potentially bringing in any of their attacking assets. Of course, as well, if maybe you've gone for Mohamed Salah, this is probably a period where he might not do as well. But we always knew that heading into the start of this season, that Game Week 2 and Game Week 3 were going to be more difficult fixtures. But I think it's still worth potentially holding on to and taking a look at Game Week 4, 5 and 6. Again, where those clean sheet numbers go up and those attacking numbers go up as well. So, yeah, pretty decent across the board. I know Aston Villa were very disappointing today. Watkins, I think, only had like 1 shot. Obviously, Tielemans didn't look great. Rodgers didn't look great. But as you can see here, the projected goal numbers are still pretty tidy across the board. So still worth holding on to these guys. Don't just sell them after one bad performance. Keep with them. They've still got some great fixtures coming up and some good projected goal numbers as well. Bournemouth, obviously, if you brought in a Bournemouth player from the start, you've now got past that difficult fixture and head into some really good fixtures. As you can see here, Game Week 2, they're highest across this period according to the 11FI numbers as well. So, of course, if you are thinking about bringing in maybe a Semenyo, maybe an Evan Nielsen, maybe some of their defenders as well, Truffet look quite good at the back as well. There is decent opportunity here for, of course, them to go and get some goals and some clean sheets over the next few game weeks. And the first player I want to talk about in today's video is going to be Ekitike. Wow. He looked really good. He also looked good in the Community Shield as well. But as we saw with the 11FI numbers, there is going to be a drop-off within the next 2 weeks in terms of those projected goal numbers. So do bear that in mind, that the next 2 fixtures aren't really the ideal hop-on point for Liverpool players, in my opinion. Newcastle massively nullified Aston Villa today, frustrated them as well. It's always going to be a difficult fixture against Arsenal, who you imagine are going to be up there as well, fighting for the league this season. So it's not going to be the ideal hop-on point to bring in somebody like Ekitike, in my personal opinion. However, Game Week 4 and on does look a lot better, especially with that Burnley at home away fixture. They look pretty poor at the back, and definitely a side you could see, you know, a lot of the top sides demolishing. Everton and Crystal Palace as well could also be pretty decent fixtures for that Liverpool attack. The only concern I do have with this guy, because he has looked good in the games we've seen from him so far, is of course the looming fact of Alexander Isak just hovering around. Is he going to join Liverpool? Is he going to remain at Newcastle? I think, genuinely, if he was to remain at Newcastle, I think a lot more people over the next few weeks are going to be jumping on this man, and for very, very good reason. If that Isak transfer really cools down over the next few weeks, I think a lot more people are going to be jumping on Ekitike, because he has been looking really, really good in the kind of opening 2 games he's played for Liverpool. The other concern I do have with him was, of course, an early substitution in both games around the 70th minute mark. For me personally, I like to be having players that do play for close to the full 90s, to be honest. They're the players that are going to, get more points across the course of a season, rather than these kind of flash in the pan players. And I think when you are spending 8.5, you do want a player that you could probably guarantee is going to get at least 80 minutes within the game. And I can't really say that for Ekitike so far. But I definitely think over the next 2, he is one to monitor. But for me right now, I personally wouldn't be looking to jump on him. I think game week 4 is probably the ideal point to go for him, if, of course, he's looking good and they don't go for another forward. Continuing with the Liverpool theme then, and there was another player who shone last night. It is, of course, going to be Cody Gakpo as well. For the people that went for it, fair play. 7.4% of you went for it, took that, little bit of a gamble, that 1 million cheaper than Florian Wirtz, and were rewarded last night with, of course, his goal within the game as well. It was an absolutely stellar finish, wasn't it? It was a cracking little finish, off the left-hand side. Lovely little kind of P-roller into the bottom corner. Just sensational stuff. Again, he played very, very good minutes, which was a big tick in my box, to be honest. I didn't expect Cody Gakpo to play as many minutes as he did on Friday night, so that already is, again, something I'm going to be looking to kind of keep monitoring over the next few weeks. And again, is another one that is all dependent on what happens with Alexander Isak. You do feel if Liverpool do get Alexander Isak, it just kind of, makes these guys a lot less appealing, in my personal opinion, because you're going to have another top attacker fighting for minutes, fighting for places. Rotation is probably going to be rife. So that, for me, is why I'm being a little bit cautious right now. I think if the transfer window was to slam shut tomorrow, Isak doesn't join, I definitely think the Gakpo and Ekitike stock go massively up through the roof, because these guys do look very good. They're playing for an attack that, of course, is still purring. It looks very, very good. Probably even more good this season with the attacking reinforcements they have added. So you do feel like Liverpool are going to be a great side again this season. It is just, of course, finding the right time to jump on these players. And for me right now, game week 2 does not feel like that ideal period with Newcastle and Arsenal coming up. If you looked back to that 11-5 data, the projected goals just aren't quite there for now. I think game week 4 is going to be that hop-on point. So for me personally, I like both of these players, and I'm going to be monitoring them very, very closely. But for right now, I think they're probably just avoids. Another player who really shined in the Friday night game was, of course, Semenyo. Fair play for the people that did, of course, go with him from the start. It wasn't the easiest fixture. Anfield away. The kind of all the betting markets, the projected models, didn't really have Bournemouth, getting any goals in that game. They fancied Liverpool for the clean sheets. But fair play if you went for it. You've done exceptionally well for yourself there. And this guy looks really good this season, doesn't he? Is he going to be taking that step up to that next level? He was good last year, had flashes, of course, over 10 goal involvements for him, but was very wasteful in front of goal. But that second goal he scored, the brilliant solo run, maybe this year could be the year where he really starts to take his game up to the next level. We saw with those 11-5 projected goal numbers as well that it is looking really, really good for Bournemouth over the next few weeks as well. And as we can see here with the fixture tracker as well, I agree with it. Wolves at home is an absolutely stellar fixture to go for. Tottenham are going to have to see how, of course, they do adapt under Frank, but over the past 2 games we've seen from them so far, do look a little bit more of a resilient defence, but I definitely think there's still gaps where they can be got at. Brighton, again, looked a little bit shaky today, and that's just Brighton. They just are one of those teams that I don't really fancy to keep too many clean sheets. Newcastle, if it was at St James's Park, probably would put me off this run, but Newcastle at home, I think Bournemouth definitely could have the beat in there. Leeds and Fulham as well, I definitely can see Bournemouth scoring in those games. So I can see lots of goals coming up for Bournemouth over the next few weeks. They were one of the best attacks as well last year for XG created within the league. And I think one of the main beneficiaries this season is, of course, going to be Semenyo from that. He's a guy who gets lots of shots off. He's a guy who loves to shoot. And he's, as you saw on Friday night, he's got the technical ability. And I think he could be a really, really good asset to hold. Now, of course, if you've got somebody like a Morgan Rogers, I don't think it's the correct time to, of course, pivot away. Like, you know, Villa didn't look good today. They didn't. Let's not get past that. They didn't look very, very good. But the fixtures for Villa are probably better, slightly, I would say. They don't play Tottenham, they don't play Newcastle within their opening set of runs anyway. So I think probably Bournemouth have got that little bit more difficult. And I think that applies for every kind of manager's team right now. Unless there was a player that didn't play through injury or benching, or you were really, really disappointed with what they did. Like, they came off at like half time, or they came off around 60. Everybody else, I would just honestly say to you guys, sit, hold your hands and wait, right? But if you do want to jump on any side, I think Bournemouth could be the side to jump on right now. And Semenyo, for me, looks like a top quality pick and very much on the radar again for this upcoming season. Let's head into the 3 o'clock kickoffs then, and let's talk about Spurs. Obviously a very dominant performance from them today against Burnley, and the star man was, of course, Richarlison with his 2 goals. That second goal was an absolutely beautiful finish, by the way. Stellar little finish from him. Again, City away. It doesn't feel like the right time to jump on the Spurs asset when they head into the Etihad. Now, Spurs actually have quite a good record, and Thomas Frank actually has a pretty decent record against Manchester City. He actually did the double over them once with Brentford in a season as well. So maybe he has got the mark in, and maybe they're going to play a very similar system to what we saw against PSG. It's going to be that kind of, 5-back with the wing-backs really pushed up high. Could be something like that, and maybe Richarlison and Kudus as the 2 up top could, get something out of that game. However, from game week 3 onwards, I think this is where the Spurs run looks a lot more appealing. So for me personally, again, it is just going to be sitting. It's a little bit of patience and not quite moving on these Spurs assets heading into game week 2. I think watch how they perform against City. If they look good, then that might be the time to jump on them for me personally, because as you can see here, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Leeds, I could probably see them scoring in every single one of those games, in my personal opinion. The problem I do have with Richarlison is, of course, Dominic Solanke is just right there. He came on in the 70th minute in, of course, the Super Cup and now in the league as well. And I do still feel like Dominic Solanke is going to be their leading number 9 for the season. I know Richarlison has had a great start, and obviously today was a prime example of that. And I think he'll get the nod for the Manchester City game while Dominic Solanke builds his fitness. But I think while both of these guys are fighting for positions and Champions League football comes around, I do probably see Richarlison missing out on some minutes. But at 6.5 million, if he can nail himself down a slot within the starting 11, he could be a really, really good value pickup at 6.5. But like I said, for now, for me, let's sit on our hands. Let's see what happens over the next few weeks, whether or not Dominic Solanke is going to start to see more Premier League minutes with, of course, Champions League starting after the international break as well. And I personally, for me, probably wouldn't jump on this one. It feels like one of those players that you might have to transfer out a little bit later down the line. Let's take a look then at our final player of today's video, and it is going to be Mohamed Kudus. Maybe I was wrong on this one, guys. I was massively concerned about his minutes. That was one of the big things that put me off going for him in pre-season. I'm somebody that, especially at the start of the year, I've been burnt in previous years. And Nkunku, Kwanzaa, Barco, these players that, we build up in pre-season and then they do nothing. Marlon's probably a prime example of that this season. Really, really smashing goals in pre-season. Looked good, benched. Like, it's just one of those. And I thought Kudus, with the competition that they've got, and if they do go and sign another winger as well, probably again would put him on like a red flag radar for me, because there's so much competition. Minutes might be a doubt, but what I've seen from him in the opening 2 games is his adaptability, and I think he's probably going to be like Brian Mbeumo, maybe 2.0 for Thomas Frank in this side. The way that he's kind of, playing as that forward within the 3-5-2 system that they're using. And then, of course, when they play the more kind of low block teams, he plays in this wide position. So he's out wide. Obviously not going to get as many chances. And as you can see, his XG from today was pretty minimalistic. But his attacking assists were pretty decent on the other hand. So it's probably going to be when they do get him playing in that 3-5-2, he's going to get more XG. When he's playing out wide, he's probably going to pick up the more assists. But for 6.5 million, 10 points ain't too bad on your opening game. Like I said, I want to see what his minutes look like. I want to see what Spurs doing the transfer market before, of course, I do make this move to Mohamed Kudus. But I, again, think he could be an absolutely fantastic asset to maybe monitor over the next few weeks, because like I said, I do have kind of the vision here that he could be this season's Bryan Mbeumo with the way that Thomas Frank is lining up and of course playing him within the kind of roles of the side so far this season. Those were my transfer targets heading into game week 2. Then of course, if you did enjoy today's video, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.